Okay, let's dive into this explainer. If you look into how to build wealth, you're instantly hit with this massive tidal wave of advice, right? Everyone and their mother has a secret morning routine, some specific mindset, or this definitive list of things you absolutely must do to become wealthy. But honestly, how much of that is actually true? Today, we are cutting straight through all that noise. We've taken the top 10 wealth-building habits from the most popular literature out there, and given our time today, we're going to break down the absolute worst and the absolute best of that list to see what actually works. No fluff, no empty platitudes, just a structured, hard look at the habits that genuinely build massive wealth.
So we need to clear the air right off the bat. There is so much of what I like to call junk advice floating around. We've all seen it. The classic example is this aggressive, almost toxic push that you simply must wake up at 4 a.m. if you ever want to be successful. It's the absolute cornerstone of fake hustle culture. And yeah, it sounds intense, it sounds super dedicated, but here's the reality. Waking up at 4 a.m. just makes you tired and cranky if you aren't doing the right things with those extra hours. What we really want are real results, those actual multimillionaire habits, the things that legitimately move the needle on your net worth. Throughout this explainer, we're going to stop exhausting ourselves with all this performative hustle and start focusing our energy strictly on what generates real, tangible wealth.
Now you might be wondering, where exactly is all this coming from? Well, 40. That number represents over 40 best-selling books on money, finance, and business. I'm talking about the heavyweights, titles like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Millionaire Fastlane, The Millionaire Next Door, all thoroughly digested and analyzed. Basically, I've gone through these 40 books so you don't have to. I mean, think about how many thousands of pages that is. And when you read that much material on a single topic, patterns begin to emerge very, very clearly. You start to see exactly which pieces of advice are just padding to sell copies, and which principles are the true, hard-won lessons shared by actual multimillionaires. So we are taking the very best from those 40 books and distilling it down for you right now.
To make this incredibly clear and kind of fun, we're introducing the multi-millionaire tier list. We're going to evaluate these distilled habits based on one strict criterion: their actual proven impact on your net worth. Here's the high-level framework of our tier list. You have your low-impact habits, that's the junk advice heavily promoted by hustle culture that might make you feel productive but ultimately does very little for your bank account. Then you have your high-impact habits, the true needle movers. Our whole goal today is to actively separate the fluff from the true engines of wealth. Basically, if a habit doesn't belong in that high-impact category, we really need to critically evaluate why we are spending any of our precious time and energy on it at all.
Okay, let's start analyzing our first habit, which, honestly, you'll find plastered across almost all of those 40 books, especially the classics like The Millionaire Next Door, and that's frugality. Now, being economical is for sure a foundational requirement. If you spend more than you earn, you will never build wealth. That is just simple math. But here is exactly why frugality ranks at the absolute bottom of our tier list. It has a mathematical ceiling. Think about it. You literally cannot skip enough $5 lattes to save $1 million. Frugality is playing defense. It's going to keep you out of debt. And sure, it might help you save your first $10,000, but penny pinching alone will not magically make you a multimillionaire. It's a bottom-tier requirement, not an upper-tier wealth accelerator.
All right, now we leave the defense behind and move on to the offense. It's time for the heavy hitters. These are the top-tier habits that definitively separate average, frugal savers from actual multimillionaires.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate heavy hitter: leverage. This means using borrowed capital, technology, or other people's time to multiply your returns. Think about writing a piece of software once and selling it 1,000,000 times, or using a bank's capital to buy a cash-flowing rental property. That is true leverage. You see, while the frugal person is trying to save an extra $5 a day by working harder themselves, the wealthy person is figuring out how to use systems or capital to do the work of 1,000 people. When you apply leverage, your output is no longer tied to the physical hours you work. One good decision, heavily leveraged, creates generational wealth. It exponentially scales your wealth-building efforts in a way that sheer willpower simply cannot match.
But here's the thing, you also cannot build a massive empire entirely in isolation, which brings us to our next top-tier habit: networking. Across almost all the wealthy individuals studied in our 40 books, networking was never about handing out business cards at some boring corporate mixer. No way. It was about building genuine relationships that unlock access to unlisted deals before the public ever even sees them. It's about securing mentorship from proven winners who've already achieved the multimillionaire status you want, that effectively allows you to completely bypass years of painful mistakes. So the crucial point is, building the right connections creates high-leverage opportunities that sitting alone at 4 a.m. trying to hustle simply will not provide.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground today in this explainer, really tearing through the noise of 40 different books to find the absolute signal. We've seen that blindly following performative hustle culture and just waking up early won't save you, and that merely being frugal isn't nearly enough to make you rich. Real wealth comes from high-impact, needle-moving habits like applying massive leverage and building a powerhouse network. So I want to leave you with this question to think about. Which of these junk habits are you dropping tomorrow? It is time to critically examine your own daily routines. Stop wasting your energy on the ineffective millionaire myths and start dedicating your focus entirely to the high-leverage actions that actually build extraordinary wealth. Thank you so much for learning with me today.